and from Yahushua, who is the faithful witness, and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto him that loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and hath made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen.
Long live the victory! Glory to the eternal kingdom! Long live the victory!
Psalm 24. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Selah. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory. Selah.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of TMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there, pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds, in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, Rakakwadash, pushing to get up out there. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. All right, and what I want to get into, with this lesson, dealing with doctrines of destruction. Okay, doctrines of destruction, and this lesson was inspired by a reading I was doing in the book of Mark. When you go to the book of Mark, chapter 8, okay, and as we know, after Yahweh Shai, did the second, miracle with multiplying the fish and bread, okay, he used that as a teaching, all right, moment for, all right, his disciples, okay. So when you get to Mark 8 and 14, and it's interesting because it reads different from the one in Matthew, which you're going to get that one as well, combine the two, and then get some more precepts, and Lord will, this is edifying. Now, when you go to the book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 14, it says, now the disciples had forgotten to take bread. Neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. And he charged them, and he is Yahweh Shai, saying, take heed, okay? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod, okay? Who was Herod, the Edomite, okay? So the Pharisees, all right, that he's speaking of, were these wicked Pharisees who was hypocritical in the law. They was overbearing, over righteous, okay, but hypocritical at the same time, all right? And then you have Herod, which is an Edomite. So he's saying, beware of the leaven. Now we know, because Matthew the book of Matthew breaks down what this leaven is that he's speaking about. All right. And then we'll proceed from there. Let's get Matthew 16 and 5. All right. It says, it's Matthew 16 and 5. It says, and when his disciples would come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Then Yahushua said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Okay, so now he mentions the Sadducees, which we know the Sadducees, those were the upper echelon of Israel as far as wealth and status, okay, under the Romans. Okay, they was the ones that was closest to the Romans, and they were sellouts, okay, do boys for the Romans. You see, something like almost like a black boule, but but they was priests. It was like an oxymoron, but that's what they were. Okay, completely okay off when you go into the Sadducees. All right, so you have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and Herod, which is Esau. Okay. Now, when you go into verse 7, it says, and they reason among themselves, saying, it is because we have taken no bread. Which when Yahweh perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because you have brought no bread? Do you not understand, neither remember the 5 loaves or the 5,000, and how many baskets you took up? Neither the 7 loaves and the 4,000, and how many baskets ye took up? How is it that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? Okay, it says it said then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. So this leaven that he's speaking of is doctrine. Okay, and when you go into when he calls out the behavior, okay, of the scribes, of the Pharisees, Sadducees, okay, and you go here, let's go back to the book of Mark, chapter 7. He charged them for what? Being hypocrites. And the hypocrite is what? An actor, okay, a performer, someone that's putting on a performance that's not their authentic self. They don't believe in what they're saying. They're just saying it for a performance and doing it for a performance. Okay, so this is when you go here to the book of Mark, chapter 7, verse 6. It says, he answered and said unto them, where have Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written? Now he's speaking to, okay, the Pharisees and scribes. So this is Mark 7:5 said, then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? He answered and said unto them, where have Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Okay, and you go into it, the Pharisees had these traditions, which washing your hands, before you eat. Now, that's not off, okay, but to nitpick about it, and try to make it seem as if the disciples, were going off in the law, okay, that was too much. But then these same men that was so high and mighty in the law, all right, they wasn't right, man. Okay, the Pharisees was making money moves too. You see, they was making plays too. They was corrupt. You had a lot of them that was corrupt as well. Okay, making merchandise on the ministry. You see, they wasn't on the level of the Sadducees, with the wealth, but they was doing their little dirt too, man. They were doing dirt too. You see, it says he answered and said unto them, well, have Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites. You see, because they was, nitpicking about the law, but they wasn't, first off, they couldn't keep the law perfectly. Okay, and they was using their position, okay, with corruption, man. You see, it said, well, have Isaiah prophesied you hypocrites, as is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, which is their mind. So Yahweh Shai, he's calling out that behavior to where, they perform righteousness, being a hypocrite, because it goes into being an actor, a performer. So they was performing righteousness, but inwardly they weren't right. Okay, and that's the doctrine that they was push, this overbearing doctrine of the law. Okay, with their behavior, all right, and their inward man didn't match it. It says, "How be it in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." Okay, just like even in the church today. Okay, the Christian church has this holier than thou, okay, mentality, but they're not doing nothing that the scriptures say. You see, they keep the traditions of men: Easter, uh, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Okay, the Sunday Sabbath, which goes back to sun god, worship of the sun. You see, that's the commandments of men. Even today, these Israelite camps that teach you that there's salvation in the law, because there's nothing wrong with teaching our people, to keep the law to the best of their ability, man. Okay, but pushing that as salvation, that's off, man. That's the doctrine and commandments of men. You see, Yahweh Shai didn't teach salvation in the law. He taught to keep the law. Okay, but what did he teach above the law was faith. You see, we rehearse the righteous act through faith, man. Okay, and that's why you see these Israelites that push the law. You see that their doctrines are off, man. All these camps that push the law, their doctrine is off, man. Okay, Sakari used to push the law, doctrine off. Okay, and the Most High broke that madness up, man, in 20 different ways. You see, PK, they pushed the law, doctrine off, man. Okay, you can't even, they won't even tell you what the MOTB is. Okay, IUIC, same thing. They push the law, doctrine off. You can't get the name or the MOTB. Okay, and other things that they go off on. Okay, so these guys is in the spirit of the commandment. Their doctrine is off. Okay, and it's leading you to destruction. All right, it's not a light thing to be off in the doctrine, man. Okay, there's serious consequences of being off in the doctrine. We come into the times where following the off doctrine is going to be literal destruction, man. Mark 7:8 said, "For laying aside the commandment of the Most High, ye hold the tradition of men as the washing of pots, and many other such like things ye do. And he said unto them, full well you reject the commandment of the Most High, that ye may keep your own tradition." And you look at, like I say, the Plantation Christian Church. This fits them like a suit. Okay, because before they will keep, any high holy day, they will keep every pagan holiday because of the tradition. You see? So you gotta, as scripture say, beware of these doctrines of destruction. So these false camps, okay, the Plantation Christian Church, okay, and then you have Esau, which is the overseer, okay, of both. Okay, so when you go here, let's get this in the book of Matthew 23. It's the book of Matthew 23. This is Matthew chapter 23 and verse 1 said, "Then spake Yahushua to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribe and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not." Okay, because these same men that'll push you to law, which like I say, there's nothing wrong with teaching Jake to do the law. And we keep it to the best of our ability. So these men, they're not telling you nothing wrong and trying to keep the law. And when they put salvation by the law, then the doctrine goes left. Okay, so some of the things that they say is on point, and you can follow. But if you follow their actions, man, you will be a hypocrite. Okay, because these same men, here it is in the law, it says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." Okay, and all these camps, Sakari was on it, ISUPK was on it, IUIC was on it, spreading that slander about the grape and the pedos. Well, that's breaking the law. Here it is. You're teaching that you have to be perfect in the law for salvation, which I don't even see how that's believable. You see, I don't even know how that's even fathomable. Like nobody called a timeout. Said, wait, the law, the whole 613, you can keep it now, right now. But hey, that's another lesson. But these same men that'll push, all right, the law, the law, all right. Whether you see, you got, Jake getting pegged, Jake pimping, Jordan Morgan. Jake told you take the juice. You was like, damn, but they're telling you to keep the law, but then you look at their pattern of works, their real time behavior, okay, and it's trash. Okay, telling you take the juice is telling you what to trust Esau, to trust Herod. Okay, because all these false doctrines, they lead you to Esau. When I say Herod, I'm speaking of the Herodian dynasty, all right, which it was started by who? Antipater the Idumean, which was an Edomite, man. You know, you see the law, shooting trannies. Like, god damn, the wee pics with the fringes on, Jake, and see, and these things ain't talked about, but they still, hit the ground running. Talking about the law, but then you look at their pattern of works, man. If you follow these men's actions, man, you will be all over the place, man. Okay, it said, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Yeah. Because these men that teach you, they beat you over the head with the law, but they're not adamant about trying to keep no law. They won't even call on the name. You won't even call on the name, but you're talking about perfection in the law. They're using the name Jesus and speaking of perfection in the law. And a lot of these men that push the law, they use the name Jesus more than Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. ISUBK, they use Jesus a lot. They throw the names out every now and then, but they use Jesus a lot. So Kyrie, they use Jesus a lot, man. Okay? It said, verse 5, but all the works they do for to be seen of men, they make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments. All right. So what they're doing is to be seen of men. All right. These extravagant Passovers. Okay. The the marching, they march around the Barclay Center for Kyrie Irving, man. A basketball nigga, man. But didn't even acknowledge them niggas, man. Okay? Didn't even acknowledge them guys, man. You see? On all these jumpers. What are you doing rubbing shoulders with WAC 100, man? Okay? Arguing with Sinetta just to be seen, man. Okay? All these things just to be seen. No Jumper podcast, man. Okay? All these things just to be seen, man, and not really for the sake of edification, man. Okay? Not for the sake of salvation, man, being an example for Jake for salvation to be seen. They do these things to be seen, man. You see? And that puts the people that follow them in the off spirit, man. You know? The women that follow these men, disrespecting the elders, pushing the slander, hide your daughters from GMS. Wait a minute. Okay? Shouldn't the guys that Joe Morgan, shouldn't you hide your daughters from them? Okay? Pegasus, you shouldn't hide your daughter from guys like this, the freaking deacon, the pimp. You shouldn't hide your daughter from them guys. Okay? So when you keep going, let's jump down in verse 23, in chapter 23, to verse 13. It says, "But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in." Yeah, so you in these congregations, man, these men are leading you to destruction, man. Because they're not going to be delivered from this destruction, man. And matter of fact, they're gonna get beat with many stripes. They're gonna get y'all beat with many stripes, man. Because y'all are supposed to know. Because you profess you're an Israelite, you profess, okay? Well, you're supposed to know. So these men, all right, is they're bound, okay, for destruction. John the Baptist say, who warns you from the damnation? Okay? So these men are bound, all right, to be judged. Okay, they're taking you to the Lord's wrath, man, and not His mercy. These guys are leading you to the Lord's wrath and not His mercy, man. So if you're caught up in that mess and you're not growing, okay, you all over the place. Okay, ICPK every few months, someone's a man of the Lord in the scriptures is not in the truth anymore. Okay, and if they told you take the juice, they're gonna tell you to take this sea hip. It's coming. Okay, and they already priming you up for it. That's why they say it's everything but that. Okay, and if they switch at the last minute, you're gonna be so confused because you ain't been conditioned on that. Okay, a lot of you Israelites getting ready to go into the worst time ever with no foundation, man. Okay, with no faith, man. With never being born again. Okay, because you get around these guys and you can just kick it. You see, you got Jake, training, push-ups and real nigga university, man. Man, listen, man. All right, Jake tell you that they serve the nigga God, and you're like, well, damn. Okay, so ain't no growth ain't no real growth in no environment like that, man. Okay, the leadership, okay, is heading for the Lord's wrath, and they're taking you with them. You see, so let's go from there, and they're dealing with Jake. But remember, okay, he warned of the leaven of Herod as well. Okay, that's Esau. Now, when you go here to Proverbs 23, Proverbs 23 and 1, it says, "When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee." And right now, who's in rulership? Esau. Now, in the spirit, what is this speaking of? Okay, and it's talking about doctrines as well. You see, because Esau Edom, because you can bypass, all right, those false camps. And, you got, because see, 2/3 is these false camps. A lot of people that's following them. There's some elect. If there's any elect in there, man, the Lord gonna shake them out before, judgment. Okay, But 2/3 consist of, niggas that just in the world, all right, and these false camps and their followers, man. Okay, so you can bypass ISUPK and, other false camps, IUIC. Okay, you can't even use Sakari anymore because that's just, I say Most High broke that to 1,000 pieces. Okay, so that's 2/3. But like I said, you can bypass, them guys and just deal straight with Esau and just be a young nigga, a young hoe. Okay, because that's what our people have devolved to. Okay, that's the results of the bread of Esau, to where our people are just young niggas and young hoes, man. That pretty much sums it up. That's about all you're gonna get out of majority of our people, okay, of this generation, man. It says, when thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat, if thou be a man given to appetite, which means show restraint. One thing about this truth, it teaches us restraint as we're in this world. What's one thing about the doctrine, okay, going to being a disciple, which goes to what? Discipline. Okay, it means restraint. It says, be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Okay, because what would you do at a meal? You would discuss, intimate things. You will make agreements. Okay, and this devil, all right, his meats are deceitful, his doctrines are deceitful. Remember, he's more crafty, okay, than any beast of the field, which speaking of, he's more crafty than these other nations, man. You see, and he brought about, doctrines and philosophies, that appease the flesh, dainty, something that's, go to dainties, the sweet stuff, the delicate, the meats, the rich food. Okay, and he presented, feminism as a dainty. He made nigga culture as a dainty, as something sweet, something that was good to the flesh. Black culture, plantation Christianity, all these things are dainties, deceitful meats. Okay, you have people celebrating every pagan, almost every pagan custom in Christianity, and think they're serving the Most High, man. Okay, and who markets these things? Who makes movies and pushes these holidays as if they're linked with the Bible? Who's behind that, man? Esau, Edom. Okay, and like I said, you ain't gotta go that route. You can just be in the world. Okay, he's done made it seem as alphabet, being alphabet is justified. Okay, so he's the marketing. I say he's the marketing what the strong black woman is that she's a hero. Okay, to market, they made niggas what heroes. You see, drug dealers and street niggas. These guys have been made heroes, man, and it's all deceitful meat. And that's the doctrine of Esau. He's telling you, look, this, is a way to be, and it's okay. Okay, and then he's so deceitful. Here it is. He on one end, okay, he put these niggas on tour. Nigga be in the Sprite commercial. Axe. You see, and then on the other end, he has a task force too. So it's very deceitful how this man moves dealing with Esau, man. Verse 6, it says, eat thou not the bread of him that have an evil eye. And there's no one that has an evil eye towards the tribes like Esau. And then even his doctrine teach Jake to have an evil eye towards each other, which that's one of the curses. But when you go into, certain of them curses, man, it's through Esau's enchantments that these things come about. The evil eye towards a brother, Jake, just having this evil eye towards each other. That's that drill culture. Okay? So where Jake can literally look at each other wrong and it's a shootout. Okay? the evil eye towards the woman. All right, feminism played a major part in that, where you have this gender war with Jake and you know niggas ain't shit, hoes ain't shit. That's the what culture did that come from? You see, they weren't talking about that in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Okay, post slavery, they didn't come off the cotton, the cotton field, saying those rhetoric, man. I don't need a man, niggas ain't shit, hoes ain't shit, nigga. They weren't fresh off the plantation saying that, man. They came about later on, man, through social, all right, engineering, man, through behavior modification, through Esau's enchantments, man, the psyops. Okay, and our people, took the bread of him that had the evil eye. Neither desire doubt his dainty meats, for as he thinketh in his heart and his mind, so is he. Okay, because this man has no good intention. Esau has no good intentions for our people. He himself is the biggest crash out. And what he's trying to do, he don't give a damn about himself, by the fact that he's trying to pull off this new world order. Esau don't give a damn about Esau, man. He don't give a damn about his damn self. You know? You see, he says, eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart, his mind is not with thee, man. Okay, and these false prophets are in the same boat, and it's all under the umbrella of doctrine of destruction, because it's all leading you to the same thing. That's why you go to Matthew. All right, Matthew 7. Oh, so let's go to Matthew chapter 7. It's the book of Matthew 7, chapter 13. It says, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Okay, and these doctrines of destruction put you on that wide gate. Like I said, you could be, because like I said, you're gonna have on that wide gate, you're gonna have women in head wraps, okay, and women in tights and tank tops and bunnies. Okay, you gonna have niggas with fringes, okay, on every shirt they own. Okay, and you have niggas with pants hanging off their goddamn ass. All of them gonna be on the same wide gate, man. That broad gate that leads to destruction, man. Because why? They're following the doctrines of destruction, man. You see? And it says, verse 14, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which lead unto life, and few there be to find it. Okay? Because when you go into the true teachings of Yahushua, it requires a straight gate. Because it ain't about being popular, it ain't about being seen. Okay? It ain't about making merchandise of the ministry. It ain't about living this comfort life. All right, this comfortable life off the ministry. Nah, man. Okay? It's about sacrifice. It's about, it's about chastisement. You see, discipline, restraint. Okay? Self-examination, man. Constantly making the adjustments. Okay? Constantly being conformed to Yahushua, man. Putting off the old man, putting off this world. Okay? As we're getting ready to go on the straight gate, which is going to lead unto life, man. We're talking about, and we push a vision beyond this world. That's one thing too with these straight gate. With these false doctrines, these doctrines of destruction. They push, this world. They don't. You don't get a vision. You don't get an expectation beyond this world with them. That's why they put so much emphasis on this world. That there was like the super Passover, the Passover 2026 garment, the fashion show, they put so much emphasis on this world, the dance off, the sisters versus the brothers, dance battle, 2026. Okay, that's why these things are so, because they of this world. Their emphasis is on the right now. See, our emphasis is on the world to come. Okay, and it's all leading, as the scriptures say, to destruction. The whole broad gate, man. Okay, because guess what? Everybody on that broad gate is going to take their seat here. Okay, let's get this, Revelation 14:9. And it says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. Okay? Because there's going to come a time where this thing is going to be mandatory. And these guys have been telling you that this ain't what it is. Okay. Everybody's going to be faced with this with this mandate. Let us see him. Okay? Merge with this technology or be outcast. Okay? Verse 10, it says, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture. It says, into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. That's what it's leading to. Okay, so whether you're following ISUPK or, all right, you just a nigga out here, a straight nigga woman, all right, and they're just in the world. Okay, it's going to lead to the same outcome, which is the destruction, the wrath, the indignation of the Most High. Okay, so that's why, as I said, hey, beware of doctrines of destruction, man. Okay, the Lord has raised up the true prophets in these last days. It's teaching knowledge and understanding, man, and sincerity, man. Okay, so at the end of the day, the elect gonna be the elect. The rest gonna be the rest. So may you brothers, Lord will, you brothers and you sisters edified. Once again, I'm gonna give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushua, by Hashem, Rakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessing salutation to the whole collect. Shalom.